Who do you think I should ask next? Is there a person or a list of people that you think I should invite next?
Well, I must confess, I haven't recently looked at the list of people you have already invited. So I may be naming some people you've already talked. Jessica Kerr.
Ah, that's a good idea. I didn't have invited her yet.
Hi, today I talked with Jessica Kerr. We talked about metaphors, sorting socks, ensemble programming, and thinking about thinking.
I'm Yves Hanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button, because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it.
Hello, and hello everyone. With me I have Jessica. And Jessica, before we start, well, in here at my side, it's 21 hours, so 9 o'clock in the evening. What time is it on your side?
It is 2 p.m. The day
2
before
p.m.
Thanksgiving.
The day before Thanksgiving, indeed.
That's not a thing where you are.
No, it's not a thing in mine, but it's good to mention that, because indeed it will be in yours. And where you are, we should see it now online. So I am in Belgium, and we're going to move thanks to Google Earth. It's going to show us a little bit where you are. And if I'm correct, you're in St. Louis, correct?
Right.
And of course, it's more or less the correction. It's not the exact location. That's not the goal. The goal is more to show people a little bit on where you are. And let's bring you back on screen. Where?
There it goes.
Yeah, now there he goes. And so, Jessica, tell us a little bit. Who are you?
Sure. My name is Jessica Kerr. I go by Jessitron. That's my unique ID. And let's see. I've been a software developer for 24 years now, 23, somewhere in there. And I got into software development because it was like easy and deterministic. Back when it was just like programming.
Easy.
Right? When it was just like puzzle solving, make this work like this. But of course, as I gain experience and as scope widens, as we write less and less code ourselves and do more interfacing and integrating, it gets harder. And fortunately, as I get older, that makes it more interesting. So now I'm super into like systems, and from agile to DevOps to systems thinking, and the offspring of cybernetics, and how we cope in a system that's always changing, that will never be fully deterministic, although pieces of it are. Little bits of code in there are deterministic. I'm really fascinated by that, and here I am.
Wow, that's already a nice. Well, yeah, of course. How do you say or condense 24 years of development in just a few sentences? But it's indeed very nice to say, okay, how you started. And,
Those sentences would have lots of curse words in them.
What you thought was basically that's what you thought 24 years ago. What was development, and then you figured out that, well, actually, it's a little bit different. Let's put it like that. So
it does
that
start out like that, right? You have to learn to program before you can learn to make software.
Yes, you have to. Yeah, indeed, you have to. Well, and I would say you have to also know a little bit about what your end users are and things like that. But usually, when we start out, we don't think about that, or most of us.
Usually, we get some requirements, and we assume they're actually what is needed.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. We think that we know what. Well, we already assume that the clients know what they want, and then we also assume that we understand what they want. And
one of the tricks of iterative delivery is everyone finding out sooner that they don't know what they want.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, my father-in-law is an architect, and he says the exact same thing. Well, he's retired now, but he
Like
says the
buildings?
exact same things. Yeah, with building. Yeah, architects from buildings, and he says the exact same thing.
Mm.
That even there, although people have lived in houses for years, and most of us we have visited multiple houses by the time we want to build a house,
Mhm.
they still don't know what they want. And we've built a house. We're now living 5 years in it. So, and even there, I thought, even with a father-in-law, looking at many houses, discussing it over
Mm.
20 years before, even I had no idea what I wanted and had a hard time to discuss it. So, yeah.
Did you know you didn't know, or did you think you knew and were wrong?
Both. Well, it's interesting because before we had an old house, and the first discussions
Mm.
were like, how can we change the old house to something new? At some point, it
Mhm.
became clear that the technical depth, and that was interesting for me as a coach, the technical depth from that house was so big that I realized that, okay, now you really have to tear it down and do
Oh.
another one. But that was emotionally hard for me.
Mhm.
Both, well, you buy a house in the idea, I love the house and we want to keep it. That's the emotional part. But the other part for me as a coach as well, I really believe that for many software things, it's better to just gradually change a little bit until you get a better thing. But I
Mhm.
realized that
Mhm.
this house was about 100 years old, and at that level, it's really like technical depth was so enormously high, and there were so many. Well, basically, when you how do you say it, when you rebuild a house, reconstruct the house, there will always be debt corpses somewhere that fall out of the closets. The problem is you don't know where they are
Mhm.
and where they
Mhm.
will fall and what's the impact. And with a new house, you still have surprises, because I was not able to read, even if I had read multiple of the plans of my father-in-law
Mhm.
from all the houses that he built. Even the plan that he built, that I thought I understood, when we start constructing the house, like, oh, at what is it, at the stairwells there's actually a hole next to it. I thought that was a floor, and he says, no, actually, if it's there, you can see it, there's a cross here, and that means that there is a hole there.
Ah.
And I was like, I didn't see that.
I
So
mean, now we have
technically
like
it's
3D
there.
modeling, and so people can see 3D models of the houses, right? That's cool.
Yeah, unfortunately, my father-in-law didn't like computers that much, so still is that kind of person who does everything on paper. Which is, of
Wow.
course,
That's
if
still a
you're a
thing.
software person like me, it's like, I wish 20 years ago I teach them how to work more with computers, and maybe he could have created it in 3D software.
Mm.
But he's really done everything on paper, which is
Wow.
incredible, because every small little change he has to do, he has to really restart all over. Where with a computer, you just do a few mouse clicks, and then yeah, then
Right.
you have a new thing. So here it's yeah, a few hours, and we jumped right into that already. So, Jessica, I wanted to ask that first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
Um, so, I mean, some people know this about me because they ask, but people ask like whether I've been in theater, just because when I speak at conferences, I have like no stage fright,
Mm.
just super comfortable. And it's because of the influence of my grandmother. When I grew up, I was really close with my grandmother, and she taught grammar and diction at the local college, and she directed the the musicals there, and also the local traveling drama troupe. And I got to participate as a child and like in middle
At what
school.
age? At that? Wow. Okay.
So yeah, like from when I was 9 till when I went to college, I got to participate in those, and oh, so valuable just to be at all the rehearsals, just to walk around on a stage like it's a total normal thing. Because I would like read the parts of the people who weren't there.
Ah, yeah. So you were really into it. You were not just there for yourself. You really wanted to learn. Well, maybe you didn't realize that you wanted to learn, but you looked at everything that the other people did as well, and so you
True.
learned with your eyes. You stole with your eyes one way or another, and you
Yeah,
learned it.
it's so valuable to have that like experience that is nothing like anything that I do for a living now. Um, but I think as software developers, a lot of our unique value as individuals comes from what we've done that has nothing to do with software development.
Mm. Yeah, I can see that, and definitely if you have that experience, and especially from the very young age, as 9. And did you have also discussions or conversations with your grandmother around that, or was that?
She would always correct my posture and pronunciation and diction and teach me to project and little things like that. Yeah, she taught me about
And how was
crocheting,
that? Like, because I
baseball.
can imagine at 9 years old, when you have a grandmother that is correcting all the time, that it could also feel annoying at that moment.
But we were friends.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah, it's
it.
that kind of correction, that kind of feedback and criticism. How it's received really depends on your relationship.
Mhm.
And
And
we had
that's why I'm asking, because that's if you're you. So not just what I'm hearing is that not just you learned about all these tricks about that help you on stage, but you also learned a lot about feedback and how it can improve you as
mm,
a person from that early age. That's wonderful.
yeah, and
Because
the way my grandmother would like meet people, would talk to people, would just like get super interested in everyone she spoke to.
oh.
She told me once that it's useful to know enough about 1,000 different things to have a conversation, just enough to have a conversation, because then you'll have conversations about it and you'll learn a little more, and then your next conversation about that topic will be a little better, and that it helps you connect with people, to know just enough to ask good questions about what they're interested in.
Wow. If you can learn that at a very young age, that's wonderful. I wish I had a role model like that,
Oh, she
because
was so
that, yeah,
great.
that's wonderful. So I can imagine that had a huge impact on you. And so you said you did that right until college. Did that was there a specific reason to stop? Was that because you moved, or that you didn't have time, or was it
Well, yeah,
anything?
moved. I went away to college, and
Yeah.
I like took one drama class in college, but you shift places, you shift interests, you get new things to learn about.
And then all of a sudden you're so much years later you're and at software conferences, and you're speaking, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, I picked up a lot of these skills along the way.
Yeah, yeah, like um it's hard to give people advice for speaking sometimes because I don't know how I do it.
Mhm. Because you it's so ingrained into your body, so it's so natural to
Yeah.
you. That's what.
There are some things that other people told me, pointers that other people that gave me, like as an adult, I can totally
Mhm.
spread. There was a
Mm.
great one. Phil Japixi told me one time when I was practicing. He said, "Don't look down at the floor. When you need to think, either look up or look straight at the people. And instead of saying just go silent. Because if you're silent and you're looking up or you're looking at them, people are like, oh, they're thinking. They must be very, very wise and
Smart.
conscientious." Right, right. Well, it's completely different from if you look down and say, then you're hesitating. If you look up and they're
Mm.
silent, you're contemplating.
And yeah, yeah, definitely I can see that that when you look, like when you look into the crowd and you look up or at a different place, that it feels completely different than when people look down and they
Yeah,
don't look at you.
yeah. Such a little
It's a.
thing, but if you can train yourself to do that, you just look so smart.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, it's interesting the way you say it, because it's you look smart, and it doesn't matter if you're smart or if you're not smart. If you do the one thing, you look down, people think you're not smart. If you
Right.
look up and
Yeah.
you are not smart, people think you are smart. It
Yeah.
doesn't really matter. It's a lot of tricks, a lot of body language tricks that most of us can learn. Maybe not everything, But well, I just said which
Well,
is
I mean,
interesting.
any of us can learn them if that's what we choose to learn. But I mean, there's so many things out there. You never get them all, and that's okay.
Well, we still have a lifetime before us, so we can work on other things as well later on if we want to do that. And I want to move to that next question. Somehow my mouse pointer doesn't want to go there.
I'm
Yes,
gonna
so
close the door real quick because my teenager just jumped in, took some stuff, left my door open. Rude.
no problem.
On the other hand, they appear to be doing laundry, so I can't complain.
Wow. Okay, I'll keep that in because that's nice as well. So let's move to that second question. If you
Ooh.
had not been doing what you've been doing now, what would have become of you? Do you have any idea?
Oh. Hmm. That's a hard question. Yeah, I went into college studying physics because it was the only thing that sounded hard. But I don't think I would have been happy in academia. That kind of research career, just so structured. And the farther you get in a field, the more you, especially like a really well-developed field, like any of the academic departments, you have to get so far and so specific to make a tiny little contribution. The beauty of software is that it's a young field. We have no clue what we're doing. We get to discover things all the time.
I like the way you put that because when I started also about 20, 30 years ago, I remember my father was also a software engineer. So I always thought, oh, he did it when everything was young and it was so much more interesting. And the longer I get in, it's like, no, we're still at the beginning. There's so much still to learn.
Yeah, and software has changed so much. Like at the beginning, you needed code where there was none.
My father had to create his own database, so not create tables, but really had to create his own database. If it's mind blowing. I mean, now we have all
Yeah,
these building blocks, and we can play with different kind of blocks, and
right.
it's
Right, but
completely different.
it's not like old style Legos either, where you have a
No,
bunch of like 2 by 4 by 2 blocks and you have to build things with all of the same blocks. It's much more like modern Legos where every set is customized and you've got to figure out how do I fit the big wall, which has like 2 pluggers over here and 3 up here, and you really have to like shape what you're doing to the tools that are available to you, and you have to get to know each of them, each of the databases that you use, each of the client libraries and the language for your database, and that's just one tiny piece.
yeah, and what's the value? Because this type of database, if you have a NoSQL or SQL, it has different advantages, different reasons why to use this or that, and depending if you start off with the wrong kind of let's keep using the wrong type of database, then you might end up with something that is not useful, even though that's what you do because you think that's what the best thing, but then it turns
Yeah, you
out.
might wind up with bugs you can't fix because your database doesn't have the concurrency properties that you need, and then you might as well tear down the house and build a new one.
Yeah, exactly. That's the kind of thing. Well, luckily, well, depending on how your architecture is, you might restructure it well, I don't want to use refactor if it's that large, but if you can rebuild it and basically, create a new layer below it and keep the roof and keep the first floor and
Right,
rework
like you
on.
can use the Postgres API for Aurora and various cloud databases that have distributed properties that Postgres itself can't support.
Yeah, that's an exact nice example of what you can do, which is all kind of things that my father would not been able to do, and not even both of us when we started. And now we have a lot more of these tools that are then, oh, now we have cloud, and now we can do all kind of other kind of cool kind of things.
And it
So
does
that's
not make things easier because at
oh
least with
no.
the database, you could define the problem reasonably well.
I think, well, that's a little bit how you started off. You thought it's easy, and it may have been easier. Definitely not easier. Also at that time, that was probably because we misunderstood it. But it was a lot easier because there were not that many options. And that's another thing I've learned from building that house. When you start off with with an existing house and you want to change something, you still have some constraints. But
Yeah, and
now
those
we have
constraints
less.
can really be inspiring.
Exactly. That's the thing. Then you think, okay, this is what I can do, and okay, there's something with the old house. I could never make it a passive house, for example. And 100-old-year house, you cannot turn passive, but
Yeah.
it has other advantages. And now in software, it's the exact same thing. Yeah, we have so many options, and you can do everything. And that sometimes is a problem that I see, that people want to do everything at the same time. It's
Yeah.
gives us
Or with it,
problems
or
in.
with a team. When you have existing software and an existing team, sometimes you get frustrated and you're like, this is too slow, this is hard. Let's form a whole new team to rebuild it some other way. But then you have all the problems of a new house with the addition of you actually don't know what you're doing with building that new house.
Yeah, you don't know the technology, you don't know the, yeah, and the teams as well, because it's all
Yeah.
new people. So
Which your existing team has all of this. They have relationships with each other. They have relationships with the code. They have familiarity and understanding, and there are constraints there that are useful. Like the existing software often works the way it does because of stuff it has to interface with, and it fits into the existing system. Oh, and your existing users know how to use that software, and that knowledge is incredibly valuable. And whenever we rewrite or redesign or even just rearrange the UI on something, we're throwing that away.
yeah, and we might think it's a constraint, and we might think it's a bug, but actually for our users it might be a feature. They might like some of the constraints or some of the things
Mhm.
that we as developers.
Because they've grown to like them, because they know them,
Exactly.
because they know where that button is and what it looks like. And even though it makes no sense for the save icon to be a floppy disk, which the kids don't know what that is. They're like the square that's dark on the bottom with the little corner cut off. They don't know what that is, but they know it means save.
Exactly. Yeah, but that's the kind of thing. It's like my 20-year-old. He had a hard time understanding what you could do with a computer without the internet, because for him it's like a
Mhm.
computer. You always have the
Yeah,
internet, so everything, and you install. Even
yeah.
though he used to play on an Xbox where he had to install software with a
Right,
DVD
right.
and things
These
like
days,
that.
I mean, what programs do you have that are standalone? Games. Games are useful in standalone. What
Hmm.
else? Alarm clocks.
Hmm.
I can use an alarm clock that's not connected to anything else. Um, what
But
else?
my children, for example, they don't have an alarm clock in their bedroom anymore
No, it's
because they
just a
use their
phone.
phones.
Yeah.
So they and yeah, there's disadvantages to that, but yeah, that's like you say, we kind of replace almost everything with computers, and then it's all connected.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
and it's it's weird how useless it is when it's not connected. What even
yeah.
is a standalone app?
And sometimes it's interesting. Some things it's advantage to put an internet connection and yeah, a computer in it, and some other things is like, yeah, okay, but it adds also a lot of complexity.
Word processor, sometimes I want a writing app or a drawing app that's not connected to the internet. But the next thing I want to do is put those things up online somewhere. So,
Yeah, well, and at the same time, I like much more like in Google Drive, that everything is saved automatically. I don't need to
mhm.
press anymore to
Yeah,
save
yeah,
it.
that save icon that we know so well, it'd still be us. Why would I
Yeah,
type this if I didn't want you to save it?
yeah. Let's save it automatically and go back to a previous version. That's the
And
kind of
open
thing.
it
But
up on my iPad and have it there, and yeah, and yes, that's right. Save it automatically and also have access to previous versions. Why should we only have one? Yeah.
yeah, and that's the kind. But yeah, we're coming from that old age where I had an exam on WordPerfect 5.1, if I'm correct. And the computers, there were two computers, one on so desktop computers, one on top of the other. And the student next to me had finished, and he turned off his computer. At least that's what he tried, but he turned off my computer. So I lost everything during the exam. And the professor was like, "Well, sorry, I told in the less you have to in the class. I told that you had to save multiple times. So if you didn't save, it's up to you. So bad luck." I was like, "It's part of the exam." I was like, "What?"
Oh my God.
So, and that's the kind of thing that we don't have anymore because it's automatically saved. And so there is a lot of
And we never
advantages
turn off our
of it.
computers.
That's the other thing. Well, I just said before, I had to reboot my computer. But indeed, it's interesting. Well, I'm working with a client where I have to use this is a bank, and I have to use their bank computer to work. And if I'm there in the bank, and if I go home, I've noticed that the best thing to do is shut down the computer while I'm still at their premises before I go home, because if I don't do it, there's all kind of weird stuff that that doesn't work the next day if I'm working from home. It's
Wow.
well, a lot of kind of things that all for safety probably, but not really what I would do and what I expect with my personal computers. It's different kind of things. So yeah, but like I'm more like what you say, never turn off my computer, or very rarely turn off my computer. um, yeah, and it's interesting to think. I just had a conversation last week with someone where we discussed that we have somewhere a rocket in space past Mars or whatever, and there is what, an XT or an AT computer in there, and they have systems to automatically reboot these computers when things go wrong. But that computer has been out in space for 20 years, and it's less powerful than my phone, but it's driving a rocket in space already for 20 years. So, talking about rebooting and not rebooting and keeping things running. Okay, let's move to that third question. What is for you your biggest challenge, and why is that a good thing for you? Well, the biggest challenge that you want to share, of course.
The biggest challenge, and so I just started managing my team, and it's a very small team. It's like 2 other people. And
Nevertheless, it's a team.
it's a team. It's a team. And the interesting part about moving into management is that I recognize that it is my job to figure out what my job is, and also to help my team members figure out what their job is. They're both like senior and principal.
And
So
were you part of that team before, or did you move from somewhere else to become a manager?
yeah, this is the developer relations team at Honeycomb. So I joined the team. Liz Fong Jones moved off. We've got a couple other people, and I took over the management responsibilities, which isn't much on such a small team, but still, there's this part where, in addition to having developer relations work, because I'm still half the DevRel team, I'm still doing that work.
It's a small team, so it's normal.
Yeah. But in addition to that, I need to zoom out and ask which work is important. I mean, I needed to do that anyway, but even more so now, and what's important to the company, and stay connected with a lot of the company. And this is only an extension of the same problem, which I think is the hardest part of software development, which is zooming in and out. Because when we start programming, and when we're actually in the code, we're constantly making decisions. Our entire job is making decisions. But when we're deciding like what to type next, we have to be like super focused on the details of like the programming language, of what this particular function is trying to do, maybe how the database works that we're trying to interact with. We have to be like deep in those technical details. And then either when it gets hard, or when we complete this task and we want to know whether it works, or whether it works well enough, we've got to zoom out and think about like why we're doing this, what is working, what corner cases matter, what error messages matter, what other circumstances have, and then sometimes it gets really hard and this corner case doesn't work and you're like, okay, does that matter? Zoom out a little further. What are we trying to accomplish with this feature? Who is it going to serve? How much time is it worth to spend on this? Because maybe this is still a test and we don't know whether this is going to be popular, or we don't know whether that case is going to happen, and then just like put an output in there so we find out in production. And from there, we're often asked to zoom out and like prioritize the tasks coming up. Oh, and look at the pull requests that other people have made and think about what they're doing and how that impacts the wider system. And then the more senior you get as a developer, the farther out you zoom. Because as a senior dev, you're also thinking about the software that your software interfaces with and the people who run that software. As a staff or principal, you're thinking about the company as a whole and the architecture over a wider period of time, not just what are we doing right now, what do we want the code to look like right now, but what are we moving toward, what are we moving away from, how does that impact our overall cost structure and our ability to scale. It just and then in management especially, but also or coaching, or really anyone who's a participant on an agile team, there's the social side to think about. Who can I ask about this? Is it worth interrupting them? Async
Oh,
is
that's an important one. Yeah, because we're so used to either people don't interrupt people and they wait too long in their own little corner, or they interrupt all the time. And yeah, that's a really important one to think about that.
Yeah. And so this and then once you get that answer, you need to get back into the code and the little details and write the test or whatever it is. And then maybe go look at information from your monitoring or observability and find out what happened in production with this feature that you delivered. There's all this zooming in and out in levels of detail, in scope, in time, in who matters and who you have to think about. And I find that zooming in and out to be like really difficult. Even at a super technical level, I still have to do that, from the details of the programming language to what am I trying to accomplish. And
And
then
what
as
do
a
you mean
manager,
when you say it's hard? What do you mean with it's hard?
it's like mentally challenging. Like you
Ah.
can't think at multiple levels at once. You can't, because what the like size of things in your working memory is very different. And so either you get a group of people and you think at different levels at the same time, which ensemble programming is great for this. Because you can have people thinking at all the different levels and chiming in when it matters. Pair programming helps. Pair programming I think of as like a degenerate kind of ensemble where you have two people. But that's a lot better than having to stay by yourself and think at all of these levels and go back and forth. Sometimes when I'm by myself, I'll use paper and like write a lot down to try to track as I go deeper and get distracted by error messages and stuff like that. And where the heck was I? Because it's just really hard.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, even for myself, I don't write much code anymore, but some time ago, I wrote a game with my son. And even at that time, the moment that I was on my own in the evening trying to figure something out, I was just whiteboarding stuff out just for myself to indeed and I didn't realize that it was what you're now explaining, zooming in and out, that I really wanted to look over there at the whiteboard and see, okay, that's the higher level, go back to the code to see again, and then understand at what level do I need to zoom in or out. That's a really nice way of putting it.
It's really nice to have artifacts for that, because at the super detail level, we have the code as the artifact. At a level above that, a distributed trace is really good. And then at an architecture diagram for a level above that. And then like some sort of feature flow of user journey kind of thing. Or an event
look
storm
at the whole
flow.
Yeah, And I really like also that you make the link with ensemble programming, because indeed, when originally I learned about pair programming, the there is a lot of controversial about the driver navigating part, but what I liked about this metaphor was indeed the fact that the navigator is focusing on a whole different level than the driver. and
Exactly.
and and with ensemble programming, I didn't think about that at that level, but that's indeed
Mm.
what's one of the big advantages that makes again you win time, because you have people, everybody can focus on a different thing, even if you don't maybe always consciously do that. You don't really say you focus on this, you focus on that. You have
Yeah, we
people
all
who
have
are
our
really good
different
at
biases.
exact.
And
And
having
so
different biases is really useful. Like, there's no such thing as objectivity, but the closest we get is many different subjective perspectives. It's
mhm,
not, we don't get closest to objectivity by trying to be unbiased ourselves, but by
no.
mixing up our biases and each focusing on different aspects and listening to each other.
Yeah, I really like that. I did 2 years of therapy training, and one of the things I heard about
Oh, neat.
the one of the training was that they said that if you, as a therapist, you cannot be both the therapist for a person and for the couple relationship. So if there is a person that wants to go in
Mhm.
couple therapy, you cannot do that, because you look biased to the partner. And
Huh.
so the what they advised was, at that moment it's better to work with two or three. So I would have
Mm.
my own therapist, the partner relationship would have their own therapist, and if my partner wants a
Mm.
therapist, then the partner can have a therapist, and they three together, they could have some a different focus. Of course, they won't be all three in the same room, but they can help a different focus. And that's kind of what you just said about ensemble programming made me think about that. Let's all have that focus for that objectivity, because yeah, who is it, a friend of mine had the phrase that there is three sides to the truth. There's your side, there is my side, and there is even a more broader one. And there is no just one truth. There is multiple ways of looking at things. And I think with code, well, that's the exact same thing. You need to think, and like we said earlier on, code becomes so complex these days. We have to think about all these different kind of things.
Mhm.
And that is why I think also why ensemble programming is now becoming much more something to think about than 10 years ago, because then the code
Mm.
was less complex. And
Yeah, yeah, and these days, I mean, the point of code is usually to tie things together, tie your UI into not just the database, but add Google Drive and authorization and um, I don't know, image editors and whatever the heck else comes together to make your software a unique capability for the user. Um, and you need those different focuses, and you can't be an expert in all of these interfaces, but you
that's
can
what
have
I
all the
found
expertise in the
interesting
room.
about the name, a full stack developer, because if you think about 10 years ago or 20 years ago, yes, you were a full stack developer in the sense that you did everything, but there was a lot less. And so these days, yeah, it's about building blocks, and you cannot be, yeah, at what level you stop. We used to joke that, does that also mean that you know how to develop the stack, the network stack, or
Firmware. Oh yeah,
exact.
networking, totally.
So no, of course not. We cannot know it. And of course, luckily, if we use blocks that we have suppliers for giving, that we don't need to know all these details. But at some level, the more complex your software is, the more you need to think about these different kind of things. That's
Yeah, yeah, and we don't maximize, just like we don't maximize objectivity by trying to have one person compensate for their biases. We maximize it by having multiple biases. Um, Having one full stack developer, you have to be weak. You have to be weak in most of that stack,
mm,
because you can't be in all of it every day. Again, switching back and forth between languages and all the different things that you need to interface with, and you probably need to add interfaces. And when you become an expert, we're much stronger when we have depth, um, depth in different people, in different areas so that we can have all the knowledge that we need in the team, in a small team, 4 or 5, and each of them knows enough about the other's area of expertise to have a conversation.
And to maybe do the start of the work. I mean, it could be okay that you just do the general thing, to have a
Right. Like
start.
I can put up a really crappy HTML page with some garbage CSS that is a starting point for someone to fix, and also lets us proceed with the back end.
Yeah, that's a great example. That's a great example. That is indeed very nice. I want to move to that next question because I think it's already clear for everyone. In this conversation, you have so much passion, you have so much drive. Or whatever. Do you know what drives you, or what that drive comes from?
Well, I think the meaning of life is that life is its own reason for being. And
Wow,
I mean,
that's deep.
I don't know. It's always seemed to me to be true. That life is its own excitement, and enthusiasm kind of works that way too. I don't know, when you care about something and you get around other people that care about it, then you can find what's beautiful in it.
Wow. And did you, because it's I find it very deep. I cannot say it's wrong. It feels very, very true to me. And I think when I look at the many people that I've seen around me that are driven, I think that's probably true for most of that. Is that something that you've always felt that way, or is that something you discovered along the way? Let's put it like that.
I don't think there was anything in particular. It's funny with life because, like, at a very wide scale, things kind of hum along, and at a very small scale, things are really pretty, like a leaf. I love to just sit at the beach and watch the waves come in and think about all the random decisions that are being made by those water molecules for which way to go right now. And then a few seconds
And
later, it like totally doesn't matter. And yet landscapes are formed by this.
And at the
And
same time, they make all different kinds of decisions, but most waves look more or less the same at zoomed out at detail. It's completely different every time. It's interesting.
Isn't that
So
cool?
again, that macro and mini looking at things, that's again the same thing. That's indeed cool. And there's
and in the middle, it gets messy. Like at the level of a person, we're always struggling. The world is never what we want it to be. And on the one hand, I do want to participate in moving the system in a positive direction. I think in software, there's a lot of room to move in a positive direction, in part because it's so complex. And so as developers, we have the opportunity to learn how to work with that complexity, because we can do things like make our software tell us what the heck is going on, and then like really learn more about those interactions. And I think we can get better at this. So I think there's a core of software development, of working in complex socio-technical systems, that applies much more widely in the world. And that if we can appreciate how we as a developer, we have a teeny tiny amount of control over these little pieces of code, which in turn have influence over everyone who interacts with them. You know, if Twitter doesn't crash today, my day is a little bit better than if it did. Unless I'm busy making fun of Twitter, but that's not relevant.
Yeah, these days Twitter might be the strange kind of example to use indeed, what's going on there. But I understand it's indeed the software that has that kind of thing. At the same time, I think all developers are always very confused and very surprised by how the users use our software. They
Yeah,
seem to
and that's another
use
good place
software. Yeah.
to get humility and to get like curiosity, right? I want to be curious about how people use the software.
And they always find ways to use it that we didn't intend it. And of course there is the, I sometimes laugh, this is the American way of dealing with it, is that they say they put little corners or the red flag, don't use the software for doing this or don't do that. A little bit like when I go to the United States, there's always these yellow things on the floor saying the floor is wet, be very careful, which I understand is good to know. At the same time, yeah, I maybe want to pass because I have to pass or whatever. But yeah, it's like software says don't use this in, I don't know, don't use this in an airplane, or don't use this on whatever
Don't use this
dangerous
to
thing.
make fun of people or something, which
Yeah,
is just
and
irritation.
exactly, that's the kind of thing. It's but it's interesting. I also wanted to go a little bit, you talked about decisions and how things are, but we just talked also, or you briefly mentioned your teenager doing laundry. It's the same thing as parents, I would say. You, as parents, we want to have a positive influence, and of course we definitely want to make them ready for life,
Yeah,
and at the
and the
same
more you
time,
have the more you try to have control, the less influence you have.
exactly, that's the kind of point I was trying to get at. That's
Exactly.
it's the if I look back at the people who were in my class when I was 16, the parents that had most common controlling their children, these children were the biggest problems in class, because once they were out of control of their parents, then it was horrible in a sense. And that was the only way for them to be released. And other children that have, like, you can do almost everything, and they were like much more grown up, much more adult, and they had their own
Yeah,
decision.
because when you expect them to make their own decisions, they learn to make decisions. Imagine that.
Yeah, and I prefer that they learn it and that I can guide them and let them see,
Right.
okay, well, this is maybe not the best decision, and okay, but learn it in a controlled environment, instead of, oh,
When
now
it's
you're
safe.
18 and now you have to learn everything and you have totally no clue on how that goes. That's the kind of thing. And I think that's the interesting thing about life, indeed, that we need to see what are, yeah, the environments where we can let people experiment with it. And I'm thinking also about going back to software, if we're talking about AI and all these kind of things where we want to have them grow, we need also to find a way on how to do that. And I think if we're talking about we said earlier on that software, or you said earlier on that software is just at its infancy. With AI, that we're not even there. I mean, that's different kind of thing. It's not the thing that I'm used to working with, but I can imagine, as a generation of software, we need to think about all these kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah, and AI has the potential. Computers are never going to think like we do, but they think differently. They have a different intelligence, and can we use that combined with ours to get new ideas, to get another level of objectivity, in a sense?
Yeah,
To
because
bring like this out.
they can figure out stuff, but again, we need to train them, and we need to train them with good models so that yeah, that they behave in a good way. And if
And
you
look at
train
the
them,
consequences and look for surprise,
yeah, well,
because
and I'm thinking in my house I have, so what is it, a thing for water, so that I can just put my hand below it and the water starts
like an
to
automatic
flow.
faucet. Okay.
Yes, exactly. That's the thing I was saying. But I've heard it at work that it only works for white people, because
Oh.
if people have black skin, then it doesn't work, and that's because that was not trained on the right diversity of people. And if of course you have a team that is only white people, they might not
Mhm.
think about it until it's too late, and you have spent, I don't
Yeah.
know how many dollars on promoting and selling it and whatever. So that's, and that's just, well, not dangerous, but if you do that on an AI level with not enough diversity in your team, you might end up with very dangerous things there.
Yeah, and they need to be changeable in response to the wider world and how people start interacting with them after they're used to them. Like, do people put stuff under the faucet to just get it to flow so they don't have to mess with it?
Yeah, that's the exact same thing. If you want to flush or if you want to brush your teeth and it stops flowing,
Yeah,
that's the kind of thing. What you deal with that, and then yeah, the idea was to use this to have less water flowing. But if people put something below it to make it flow all the time, and then they forget about it, then we'll actually
right,
lose a lot more water. So
right,
that's
right. Whereas if you put like a little paper cup dispenser, they won't have to do that.
yeah, exactly.
So
So
yeah, you have
that's
to like the things get. Oh yeah. I think this is from Jerry Weinberg, Secrets of Consulting. Everything new is broken because it doesn't fit with the existing system. This existing system hasn't adjusted to it yet. It's not part of what works. And it takes a while, and it's that iteration that makes something good. That iteration in response to the environment and what really happens.
Yeah, and you see that at the moment that you do these new kind of things inside companies, and you try to change something and say it's not working, it's wrong, or whatever. Yeah, by design, because if you want to change something, and this is, I had today, I reminded me about an article. I think Kevin Henny told me about that for. It was about efficiency and effectiveness, the whole discussion around that. And there was an article that I was sent to me, and like I said, I think it's Kevin that sent it to me. That was about if you have a team or a company that is very efficient, then it's impossible to get out of it because you have the efficiency trap. Because by the time, if you want to move to more effective, so if you're very efficient doing the wrong thing, it's hard to get out because, like you say, you do something new and it's broken by design, so it's not efficient as it was
Yeah,
before, and so
yeah,
people resist changing it. Yeah, but you're very efficient doing the wrong thing, so we first need to become inefficient doing the right
yeah,
thing, and then we can bring it back to, and that's the same kind of thing. It's broken before it. If you want to change it, refactoring is the same thing. You there is a small amount of time, hopefully, that something is broken and we want to fix it very quickly. That, of course, we want to limit that time, and we don't want to spend months we just want to spend minutes in a broken situation, but it first needs to be broken before we can make it better. That was
yeah,
it
So the
sounds
idea of
like Jerry,
being
but I
comfortable being uncomfortable.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
And
and one thing that I've definitely learned recently is that the system doesn't work. The system is always broken. And that's a thing in software too. In a big enough distributed system, it's always failing somewhere. But in our human systems, in our societies, absolutely the system does not work. And if you believe the system works, then you are blinding yourself.
and some people keep insisting that the system is working, and actually, well, this is individuals and interactions. The reason why a lot of things is working are these interactions and are these people who make it work.
Right. The
And
system works in spite of its rules. Because individuals push boundaries and drop things and add other things where they're needed in situations. And I mean, we have the influence to make the system work more smoothly, to come closer to fairness. But if you ever believe it's already fair, then you can't fix it.
and I think that's why it's so interesting to see people, users, in using your software and seeing what they're actually doing, and then you see that they and yeah, they might be annoyed that they have to click 3 times, but they don't bother telling you anymore.
Right. No, they
And
yeah. Because if you think your software's right, then you'll be like, they're using it wrong. No, they're using it. Now
I,
make it better.
I I don't remember who told me that story, but I heard a story about very early on in Microsoft when they had real users using the software. I think Windows or Office, something like that. So really in the beginning, and there were developers behind a mirrored glass, so the end users could not see them, and the developers were like, "They're doing it wrong. Give us new users," and they give another user, and and the other user does the exact same thing, and it's only after 3-4 users that the developer started to realize, maybe it isn't the user, maybe it's the software. And yeah, they literally had to have people seeing multiple times that, hey, they're doing it wrong. Well, if your software doesn't help them finding it how to do it right one way or another, that is right by definition. The end users are always right, and like you say, the system is always broken one way or another.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it's always in flux, and that's okay because that is what makes it alive.
because if it's yeah, if it would not be broken, it would be fixed, it would be stable, and stable might not, it might be even more dead, because that's the real definition of software that is stable, that is, if it's no longer used, nobody's complaining about it, but then it's dead as well. So that's interesting.
Yeah,
That's,
that there is no done. Done is very dangerous in software, because then it forces all of the rest of the world, if it's going to continue to use that software, which if you have something like, I don't know, the core of our travel booking system between airlines, everything has to conform to that, to what keeps that working. And it makes you an obstacle to evolution if you can't change that piece of software. And some whole companies have ossified and been unable to update their business model and stay competitive, because they're dependent on software that they can't change. But it's so efficient.
Yeah, but at the same time, I maybe it's because I'm growing older. I really like indeed the agile way of continuous improvement and whatever. But if you're a user from a software, when they start to change some of the things, sometimes it's annoying, because sometimes they add features that I'm totally not interested in, and
because they
and
feel like they have to do something. That's true. The continual change that I want in software is not usually adding features. Marketing. I'm in marketing now, officially. I'm an engineer in marketing. And it's fascinating to see marketing loves new features, because then they have an excuse to make a splash and do a press release and create a moment. And I'm like, can we find ways of marketing that don't involve adding features? Because these features are slowing everything down. I mean, they every new feature makes every other new feature slower to develop, and execute, and mostly I don't want new features, but I do want it to continue to get smoother, it to integrate with the latest authorization things that I use, and to work in all the browsers. And I want it to work on my iPhone, on my new iPhone, and to work
and still on
smoothly.
your old iPhone from your children, for example, maybe, and at the same time. So I wanted to work on both devices.
And these are hard things, but they're not flashy things.
No.
They don't show up in the change log. They just make it better.
It reminds me, I don't know why I'm getting another Microsoft story, but it reminds me of something I heard in the beginning. Well, I don't know, beginning somewhere in Office, before they moved to Office 365, that at some point that they started making, so they had marketing indeed, and they're all this nice shiny new thing in Office. But I was told that most of the times that thing existed already in the previous version of Office, but so they kind of, to avoid that discussion, so the developers first created that, and it was typically requested by some client who was interested in that, and so they gave it in a version of Office, but they didn't make any publicity about it. in my mind, they never told marketing to avoid that kind of thing that you were just talking about, and they had time to make it better. And it's only in the second or in the third version that it's in there that they told marketing, and then they made a big splash. But at that time, it was already a few years existing, and they had already
It
learned
was
about it.
solid.
It was solid at that time. I have
And
no
you can
idea if
find out
that
how people actually use it, which makes
by
for a
real
lot better
users.
marketing messages.
Exactly, and not have the things, and that's and I've tried it a few times at that time when I saw marketing material from Office to actually look for it, and in most cases I did indeed found previous versions of these things, a very small version, not everything with the flashy thing that the marketing was talking about, but indeed in many cases there was already a version of that kind of thing out there.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. So what I just don't know if that it was in there and they didn't tell marketing, or that marketing realized that okay, this is not at the level that we can make publicity about it. It's probably somewhere in the middle there. But yeah, that's the kind of thing I think we need to look more for, because indeed what you were saying, marketing wants always to talk about
Mhm.
the shiny new things from the moment
Right.
it exists, before we even know if it's working, if it's what the customers want or not. So
It's kind of like, you know, how in the news, in the evening news, it's a problem that most of the things you hear about are bad things, which is because
mm,
most big events are bad, whereas the good events tend to be small. They tend to be local, and there's like good things going on all around us all the time. That's what holds the world together, is a bunch of people interacting positively with each other, uh, and doing
yeah,
their jobs and picking up trash um,
and they
and
don't
having
make the
fun.
news.
But they're not news.
Yeah,
And
and
the
I
software, the updates that I want are not news. They're just, hey, still works. Hey, it works even faster over here. Hey, this one thing is a little smoother and you're not going to get this error message anymore. Those are not news.
mhm,
They're what I
that's
want.
yeah, that's the kind. It reminds me of when there was the Boston attacks on the marathon, on the Boston
Mhm,
Marathon.
mhm.
There was one bad guy, but what I heard that somebody saying, because of course from Europe I have no idea what's happening there, but there was someone from Boston that told me, if you get the news and you get that one attacker and the bad person, and everybody talks about the bad person, but what you probably didn't hear on the news is that everybody around in Boston was doing so much nice, because everybody was out without a phone, and because you have been running for some while,
Mm,
and so a lot of people were giving out chargers and making possible that people could
nice.
get water and stuff like that. So there's a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah.
normal people that doing normal things, helping out each other. But what comes
Plus
into the
all the other
news,
marathons where nobody got shot. Those were good things.
exactly, and so that's so we're focusing on that one big event, and that's the large thing, and we don't talk about everything that happened before that went really well, or when and when what that person told me is that if every time that there is something bad, focus on the people, focus on the helpers, because there's
Mm.
always more people who are doing
Oh,
the good
yeah.
thing than the bad
Yeah, yeah,
people.
like when we have an incident, and an incident is always a learning opportunity. And when you have a careful incident review and you can see all the different people who contributed, all the different tools that contributed, and like the ones that got in the way, and then we can make those a little better. Um, and you learn so much about how the system really stays up from one bad thing that happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that's the thing, eh? And then you learn what everything that you have, and that you realize that, oh, this large thing that is running, and we have all these developers that we're paying, but maybe we're also depending on that very small little thing that some open source developer sitting in this corner is making, and that nobody heard about, but actually turns out that a lot of the open source community is depending on.
I like
That's
that.
the
So use the big bad thing as a trigger to look closely and see the thousands of good things going on.
yeah, and to mention it and look for that, and to recognize the people who are doing the good thing. That's the
That's really
I
good.
It reminded me, when was it? Last year that we had the log4j problem
The
that happened.
yeah, that was a fun one.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Yes, it was not nice, but at the same time, you see so many software that is using it, and that should actually get a recognition for the people who are actually working on that, and doing some nice things there.
Yeah.
While you're writing, I want to move to that next
Writing that down.
question. What do you consider your biggest achievement? So basically, this is your moment to brag. And I know for some people it's really hard to do
Yeah,
that.
I'm
I don't know
American.
if okay.
So it's not such a faux pas over here.
Interesting,
Um,
because I had some people who are also Americans who had a harder time. But yeah, I
yeah,
recognize what you say. Usually, it's the Europeans have more trouble with.
right, right. If I'm in like Sweden, it's totally different there. The thing that I'm most happy that I got the opportunity to do in the world is my favorite keynote about the Florentine Camerata and the invention of opera, and how that illustrates problem solving in music in a way that's similar in science and art and software. The way invention is a phenomenon of groups and of time periods, and not of individuals, and how that illustrates semathesy, the concept of semathesy, which is a learning system made of learning parts. And that we learn best when we're in a team that's learning really well. And if you want to be a great developer, make your team better. Focus on learning within the team and sharing within the team, because that like feeds back and around, and we all learn more and can learn something entirely new. So this concept of semathesy, and our team is a semathesy with the code as part of that learning system, because it is learning. We teach it, we change it, right? So it learns from us. And if we listen to what it's doing, listen to how people really use it, we learn from it. And how this makes software development special.
Why does it make it special in this case?
Because we are able to work within these learning systems and advance faster than any other socio-technical system, because code is so malleable. And I don't want to spoil the ending, but I really do think that software development is its own thing, and it's an exciting field to be in. So that talk has had an impact on thousands of people now, because I've keynoted a dozen conferences with it, and I still do it once in a while, like inside companies mostly. And it's so good. I feel like I acquired a really useful piece of inspiration there that has helped a lot of people, and I'm really happy about it.
Sounds like a really good thing. So I want to. You talked about learning at team level, and I wanted to check a little bit thing. You talked in the beginning. You talked about learning with your grandmother when you talked about when she was doing these classes. Is there a link there? Was that also a learning team for you when you're working not just with your grandmother but everybody on stage there? Is that similar, or do I see a link that is not there for you?
Sarah May draws some really good analogies from software development to theater, to like the production of a play. A team is more like a production company making a play than they are civil engineering or mechanical engineering, or mathematics, or architecture, because we're so dynamic and we are always playing off of each other. We each we have capabilities together that we don't have separately, and we're
And
playing off the audience.
Yeah, and so that's something I wanted to ask, because then you're talking mostly about a theater production, that I would say in life, because a theater production, I don't know anything about it, but the way I see it is that you also prepare for months and months and months while you're not in production. So you basically you practice a lot more than you're in production,
Hmm.
or at least for a very long period,
There's a
maybe
lot
not.
behind the scenes. Yeah.
Yeah, but in software it's kind of the opposite. It's like everything we do is almost production wise, because what we
Oh.
do, and well, yeah, exactly, that's, well, in an agile world we want to go as fast as
Mhm.
possible, and so there is a different kind of dynamic, I think,
But
or how
there's
do you
also a
see it?
lot going on behind the scenes that the people using the software don't see.
Hmm.
In fact, the point of the software is to look simpler than it is, right? Is to make something easier for the person or the other software uh, that's using our interface or calling in to our service. We make something look easy that isn't. And so there's all this work going on behind the scenes of understanding the domain and all of the technical difficulties and all of the scaling problems and all of the realities of what happens when this particular piece of Amazon goes down. Um, so there is a lot. It's not all beforehand, but a lot of it is beforehand. I mean, it takes some work to get a feature ready for production, and oh my gosh, the migrations when when there's data to take care of.
and
So
and
yeah,
it seems like it's fluent, a little bit like if somebody's on stage and is stating a full poem, and it looks so fluently, but it's actually
mm,
practiced years. There's
yeah, yeah,
actually
like
a lot
stand-up
of practice.
comedians.
Yeah,
Uh,
they look like they're really good, and they
you
do it off
practice
the
so
bat.
much that it doesn't look practiced.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
that's the thing that's really there. And it made me think also about writing books, for example. For
Mhm.
me, a good author has worked so hard that a good book is should be easy to write, but that's because the author worked so hard to make sure that all the hard parts. And if I read a book that is hard, that for me it basically means that the author,
Uh,
well,
didn't
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 do
put
didn't do
enough
his
work
job.
into it to make it simple. Yeah, and in like the I think it's a Mark Twain quote. Um, I I'm sorry this letter is so long. I didn't have time to write a shorter one. Very much true in code too.
Yes.
When you've played around and you've worked through and you've refactored 6 times and you hit the right abstraction for this context, it looks obvious.
Yes, it looks obvious, but it's yeah, that's the hard part. It should yeah, it's not easy, it's not simple, but we
Yeah,
make
when you
it
hit the
look
wrong
simple.
abstraction, oh my gosh, you just made the code so much harder in your attempt to avoid repetition.
Yeah, and I think, and this is again where we come back to what you said earlier. We need a full team, and we need everybody thinking about
Mhm.
it, because
Multiple
we
perspectives. Yeah.
yeah, and once you have the right metaphor and you understand it at multiple levels, that can help you so much.
Mm.
It reminds me of a story that I heard from a friend of mine, Pascal van Kouwenberg, who said he was working with a team and they were using some kind of it was actually also about theater. They were using a metaphor about theater for
Mm.
their software, and they did an interview with a new developer. So this person totally didn't know the code, and they explained a little bit their metaphor and what they were doing with the software. But that person had experience in theater where the development team did not.
Hmm.
And they explained something, and that new developer, so he was into the interview to get hired, and he said, you're doing something wrong, because this is not right. It in theater, this is how we do it. And the lead developer at the table looked at him and said, you just solved our biggest problem, because what you just said is
So the metaphor was sufficiently accurate that that ways of doing things in the theater actually applied to the code.
yeah,
Nice.
exactly. But
Nice.
they didn't understand it, and because they misunderstood what's happening in theater, they implemented it wrong, and they explained it wrong. And it was like, And that was for me the story that sold me on metaphors. That was like, wow,
Mm.
if it can be that. And because a good metaphor is really hard to combine and to think about, but if you can find, and of course metaphors, everything is limited at one time, but that was a nice example of where they thought they were hitting the limits of that metaphor, where actually it was showing them the real problem.
Nice.
So that's
Nice. Yeah, I think there's a thing called constitutive. No, wait, it's a theory constitutive metaphor where people will say something like, what am I thinking of? Here's a false one. Computers are like human brains, and human brains have dreams. Therefore, computers have dreams. Dang it! I'm screwing up this example because I can't think of a good one. But a theory constitutive metaphor is when it's really true that these two things are parallel. So there's a lot of these in systems, like cells really are at some level like teams, maybe, because they're both learning systems of learning parts. And when you have to like, dang it, I'm screwing it up again because that was also not accurate. I would have to go consult dynamics in action for the proper theory constitutive metaphor. But you can say this really is like that. Whatever they were doing really was like theater. And so the metaphor was more than a convenient way to convey information. It really gave information back. And we do this with math and the real world. When with mathematics, there's this question of, is it discovered or invented? Well, someone came up with the basics, with like the basic start of counting or the natural numbers, but then all these properties are then discovered on top of that, and they map onto nature. So
the whole fraction thing.
Hmm?
Not fractions. I'm looking for fractals. That's the word I was looking for, because that looks mathematical, but then we discovered that in nature we have them everywhere. So
yeah, you can find them, and then you can take the properties of mathematical fractals and learn something about nature. You also have to go seeking out the limits, and then the differences that you find are also interesting. What have we not modeled? Yeah. So it's a thing. Some metaphors are theory constitutive, as in real, and other ones, such as the computer is like a human brain, are like very limited utility, and you have to be super careful.
yeah, I think, and it depends again at what level you explain stuff, because I just had a discussion at the dinner table with the 20-year-old and the 15-year-old about, okay, but this is how things were explained in when you're in college, or when you're in this kind of school, and you can't explain it with the full details, because otherwise a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old would completely not understand it. But then comes a time that a few years later they tell you, well, actually what we told you last year, it's not really true, it's really this. But yeah, and that is sometimes interesting and challenging for a child, that they say, why did you then tell me? Well, we first needed to explain this thing in this way. Now that you understand that, we can move to much more complex mathematics. And I think that's kind of similar in software as well. We discover some kind of metaphor, and then we find the boundaries, and then where we go next.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like if you think your brain works like a computer, then you would think that your long-term memory would be like a hard drive or cloud storage now, which would be slower to access, but still perfectly accurate. And you would be wrong.
Well, to talk about another conversation that my 20-year-old and the 15-year-old had, but then I think more than 10 years ago, we had a little Fisher Price telephone at home. I don't know if you know them, with the red horn. Yeah. And my daughter was really frustrated because there was a cord in it. And at that time,
what kind
we
of phone
didn't
has a cord?
Yeah, nobody has. And the older brother explained that that was to make sure that we didn't lose the horn, because that, well, yeah, because otherwise you would lose that red thing. Because for, and in his mind that was completely true, but no, actually there was a reason why that was before.
That's
and
funny.
and it's and that conversation later turned into some frustration with my daughter, that at some point I was on the phone, and we needed to go somewhere, and I would stay on the phone, and my partner would drive us somewhere, and I would stay on the phone because it was my cell phone. And some moments I was on the phone, a cordless phone as well, but we couldn't leave because this was the house phone. And of course, if I would, yeah, that conversation would not work. And she completely didn't understand. These are both,
Oh,
yeah, these
they're
are
both
both
phones.
wireless.
What's the
Yeah, they're
problem?
phones. They're wireless. So why do you need to stay at home? For
Wow.
her, that turned to be, and I heard later on, I think it's in Sweden or somewhere there, that they have so little phones, so much a little
Landlines.
landlines. That's the word I'm thinking. Thank you. That their decked phones at home were also working as mobile phones. So basically,
Mm.
these phones could switch from a decked phone, which is a wireless phone at home, to just go outside. So they invented that there because that was, whatever reason, that was interesting. Uh, and that in Belgium we don't have these kind of things. Again, we're 10 years later, so I don't know if people, because most people, well, we just cut out our landline. We don't have one anymore, and I see a lot of people around me doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But that's, again, that's where
Yeah. I
metaphors
keep
don't
our
no longer
landline.
work.
We never answer it, but it's really useful for filling out a phone number on forms.
Mm. Well, I can imagine I can still fill it in, and then people complain, and then I can say, "Oh yeah, that's my old phone number." But it's one of the things. It's one of the things I need to think about before. It took me a month or two for whatever, when we wanted to stop the landline, because I thought, okay, but then there is I don't know, whatever tax authority or whatever, they still have this number. I need to
Mm,
make sure that all these official things they have my cell
mm.
phone now. I think most people use these days the landlines to find their mobile phones. I think that's the most
Oh,
used.
that is, yes, it is useful for that. Although sometimes it works to ask Alexa to call my phone, but
Yeah.
not always.
Well, that doesn't work if you're alone at home. If you're alone at home, you want to leave and you don't find your phone, then a landline is handy.
Mm.
Uh,
Oh,
and
right.
then that's because there's no other cell phone at home. But again, then we come to other limitations and other things. Okay, let's move on. I want to know, do you have a personal agility tip to share? Is there anything that you think, oh, this is what I'm doing that might be interesting for other people to know?
Something I noticed the other day, something I noticed that I like constantly do is like every few minutes I catch myself thinking about how I'm thinking. Like stopping to observe, okay, now I would like to be sleeping, but actually my brain is doing this. And and like either try to shape that or just be like, well, I wonder what I ate that's making it do that. Um and
Mm.
this comes from like elementary school. I remember our like gifted class, the teacher had a big poster along the wall that said in a tricky there was a trick to reading it, but it said thinking about thinking improves thinking.
Thinking about thinking improves thinking. Wow.
Yes.
And
And
that was
here's
in elementary school.
yes, yes,
Wow.
yes. And I think that really took because I do it all the time. But it's a really good trick to avoid boredom. Because like if I'm
Mm.
listening to someone who's talking, I can like, and it's boring. I'm not interested in what they're talking about. I can consider the rhetorical devices they're using and their style. And then I can think about how it's affecting me and my mood and like how I'm sitting and can I change my mood if I change the way I'm sitting and what decisions led me to sit here and what values do I have that I sit here for and um a-
Wow.
and just like go meta level after level on either some usually my own motivations um and it keeps me from being bored. It's really hard to be bored unless you're asking me to like pay attention to something intermittently, and it keeps
And then
happening. I hate that.
needing to respond, because then you can't think at meta level probably, because then you
Right,
might respond, yeah,
exactly,
because that
exactly.
was a rhetorical question. Do you want me to answer, and things like that. It's interesting because I think I do that sometimes, but I don't think I do it at the level that you're doing. So that's it's. And do you have any tricks on how you improve that, or how you teach it yourself, or was that so early on
Well,
that you learned it? That
what it does is, when I notice that, like, I don't know, I'm in a mood, I'm anxious about something that, I mean, even if I'm justified in the anxiety, being anxious isn't helping, right? And just noticing that and like, okay, that's how I feel, and I can still work. Uh, that kind of noticing how I'm thinking, and then I can notice like, okay, I get more anxious if the windows are closed and I'm not getting any fresh air. I get more anxious, or I get less anxious if I take a walk. So then I can observe that I'm not getting anything done on this particular program or task or whatever. So instead, what can I do that will get me in a place to get things done? Which
and
might be,
do you track some of that? Because these days we're all have
yeah, people have like tracking apps for that. I haven't done like the mood app and the tracking, um, which is partly because whenever I pick up my phone, 20 minutes are gone. Um,
but you
Another
also have.
optimization is to get a YubiKey for security, because if I have to go to my phone for a card for a code, gone.
Yeah, so that I can imagine. No,
Yeah,
but I'm
so
also asking because sometimes I have a tracker that knows how
mhm,
many steps I do, and I
mhm,
definitely see it if I didn't move enough, that I'm actually feel more tired. And that's one of the things I've
mm,
learned by
mhm.
looking at data. And I used to think, well, oh, I'm too tired to walk or to run or whatever, and it's actually the opposite. Is that
Yeah,
the more I move, the more energy I have, or the more water I drink, or
right.
whatever, that
Right, like,
kind of
what
thing.
we feel like doing and what will make us happy are so different.
Yeah, but
And I can
it's
only go by past observation on that.
yeah, and it's like, like what many people eat snacks and whatever, but when they depressed, or they don't feel well,
Mhm.
where actually we know that a lot of sugar snacks that they might eat at that time might actually have a dip somewhere later, so that might be
Right.
the right
So,
kind of
like, at
thing.
that time when you want to reach for the snack because 'cause you're sad, if you have the mental energy, and this, like, it takes some willpower, so it's you don't always have it, and that's okay. But if you have, like, the mental energy to be like, "Okay, I want to eat snacks." In the past, I have observed that if I eat chocolate, I feel worse, and if I eat green beans, I feel better. And go to the extra effort to eat green beans, and then feel really good about yourself for that bit of adulting because that was hard and you did it. Um,
That, yeah, but that then you're in the positive loop, where otherwise you might even be in a negative loop. Oh, I ate chocolate, and that not just are bad because it's not healthy for you. You feel it in your body, but at the same time you keep beating up yourself because this was not the
yeah,
adult thing or whatever. And
yeah,
that's
yeah, and so if you do eat the chocolate, if you recognize that, okay, yeah, green beans would be better, but I don't have it. I don't have the willpower to get green beans, and I'm going to eat this chocolate now. Okay, also have compassion for yourself at that point because you have observed that you don't have this willpower, and so be nice to yourself because that's going to help. Yeah. Related
I
to this,
like that. Yeah, I
oh,
like that. Yeah,
yeah.
you wanted to say what's related to that?
Oh, one of the best pieces I ever best piece of advice I ever heard was from Richard Campbell, and like with the scotch in his hand at one point he said, "People say follow your dreams. Pff, fuck your dreams. Try shit and see what makes you happy.
Wow.
We don't know what we want, just like our customers."
Well, we are our customers in that sense. We are the customers from our
Yeah,
life, and indeed, the more you try, well, you might want to limit some of the dangerous things, but indeed, try a lot of stuff, and you will learn what makes you happy,
right.
um,
And then go with
and
that. And
and
notice
and
it.
don't.
Notice, hey, I'm making this drawing right now and it's making me happy. Maybe I'll do more of this. Um,
Mhm.
I
And
didn't
don't
really
beat
want to
yourself up.
babysit these kids, but actually I'm having a great time, kind of thing.
Yeah, I like that, and it's and the especially combined it with what you said earlier about don't beat yourself up if there is a,
Mm.
if you're in a stressy. I've noticed myself some weeks ago that we were in a very stressy situation. One of my children said, "Okay, I want to stop school," and okay, that even though we supported him fully, at the same time it creates some stress and things. And I noticed indeed that I was. Eating less
Mm.
healthy, I was staying up late and whatever things
Oh, and
that.
that'll
And
spiral too, because then you'll feel worse, and then you'll eat less healthy, and then you'll feel worse. Yeah.
yeah, and but because I realized that very quickly on, I realized why I was doing that. I was like, okay, I'm not going to beat myself up for this. This is a
Mhm.
situation what it is, and that means that in this stressy situation, it might be okay to be a little bit less unhealthy for whatever things, because if that might help with that stress release,
Yeah,
that
yeah, because
that
the
was
biggest
helpful.
spiral is when you get mad at yourself for being down.
Yeah, exactly, and then it's definitely not helping.
Yeah, and
And
you can redirect that by having some compassion for your own self,
yeah,
to be a friend to yourself, to be a good friend to yourself.
and for me, that's especially with parenting. If you as a parent even beat yourself up for these kind of things, you send it even more down to the children in stressy situations and everything.
Yeah,
So
we were talking earlier about parents who need to have control over their kids.
mm,
And whenever I see a parent like that, I'm thinking, this isn't about your kid, is it? It's about you. It's about you feel like you're supposed to make your kids not curse. You feel like you're supposed to make your kids get good grades. You're supposed to impose this on them, or this is what you wanted out of life, or it tends to be really about you. And
mm,
and that's no fun. Uh, one of my mantras is, it's not about me, and that helps me let go of a lot of things. Yes, the world is
mm.
screwed up. It's not about me. It just let's this code is wrong. That's okay. It's working and it's not about what I think. Maybe it's time to refactor that, but maybe it isn't. Let's talk to other people because it's not about me.
This reminds me about a U2 song where Bono sings something like, "I thought the world revolved around me. I was wrong," and that's the kind of thing where when you're a teenager, you think a lot of that is happening, and people look at you all the time, but actually nobody's caring about you because everybody's
Oh,
thinking
right.
that
People are like,
everybody's.
someone might see me with my makeup messed up and they'll judge me. Dude, they don't care. They're not thinking about you.
No, it's one of the things. Okay, let's put this out in public. One of the things that I've done some years ago is that we are a family of five, so we have three children. So every once in a while, you have to what is it? Sort the socks. So we have if you have five people and you have 7 days a week, it's 35 pairs of socks. So that's a lot of work. And so at some point, I said, why do I worry about it? And I said at some point like I don't care about it anymore. So there's a bunch of socks that just stood in the drawer, and in the morning I can even do it in without turning on the line. I just pick up two socks, and I don't care if they're the same, if they're if they are the same color, whatever. And it's now more than I think 5 years that I don't care about it. And so far, two people have noticed it at work, and in both occasions that was at the training where I had to take off my shoes. Well, one in the training and one for whatever. We were entering a room where we were asked to take off our shoes, and that's the only two times that people watched it, saw it, and one of these was really like, "How could you do this?" And the other didn't even care. And that's the kind of thing.
Over
I
here, it's
why
probably a positive.
That's the other thing that, but for me, I was like, yeah, why would I worry and spend so much time on it? And of course they're teenagers, so they care a little more about it, and so I understand that
Oh yeah, that's
they,
normal. Yeah.
it's normal at that kind of age. But for me, like I totally don't care, because it just takes too much of my time, and I like to spend my time on other things.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. My 15-year-old, who's the one with fashion sense, refuses to wear two socks the same.
okay.
Like,
That's
he'll actively separate pairs to get two different socks.
okay. That's the next level. I'm not there yet. But that's but again, she grows up in a family where that is okay, and you're not a
Oh
controlling
yeah, it's
parent
totally
saying, yo,
encouraged.
you're not supposed to do this or whatever. You
Right,
might
right.
get
My older one remarks, it's really hard to rebel here, Mom. The only rule is don't die.
my oldest son is not interested in going out, and concert for him is like, this is too expensive, I can just watch a concert on YouTube. And both my partner and me were like, what? We used to both to lose to go out and spend a lot of time, and like, yeah, that kind of rebelling is, I'm not going out because I'm not interested.
Right?
I don't think he's doing it on purpose, but sometimes it feels like that's the kind of rebelling where my friends and me, we sneak out of the window just to make sure that we could go out, and that's the kind of rebelling. And in our family, that's not possible. Like,
Yeah,
that's a,
yeah. But letting them be what they need to be. And
and they will be screwed up anyway. It doesn't really matter. They even if
that's
we
true.
try to do it at some point, they will have their own frustrations because they can't rebel or whatever. But that's them.
Yeah,
So
yeah. But let them find their own
exactly,
problems instead of us imposing ours on them.
exactly.
And it's
That
the
life
same
is
with
all
software. Like, people are going to use it the way they use it. Appreciate that. Look at it. Look for the surprise. And when it breaks, then worry about it. You can't fix all possible errors ever. Fix the ones that matter, but be on the lookout for the ones that matter.
yeah. For me, I want to even make it bigger. You talking now about software. For me, that's it's a little bit the same to agile. I mean, there's agile is used in all these kind of wrong things, and then people complain, but that's not agile and whatever. Yeah, but if nobody was doing agile, we would not even be talking about it. And yeah, so yes, they're not using it at the right thing, but at least people are thinking and doing much more agile stuff than 20 years ago. Uh,
It is
and
progress. Yes, we have moved in a useful direction.
exactly. We're not there yet, and we can complain a lot about it if we want, but at least it's better than if they would have completely ignored it, and if that would not have made a dent in the world, I think. So in that sense, they're not
Yeah.
doing it right, but at least they're using it. Same as the
Yeah.
software.
I was reading something the other day about how systems thinking is like dangerous, and it's not the right thing because it might make you think like you can just analyze a system and then you can change it, which is very controlling. Um, and instead, we should think in complex responsive processes, which is a lot like semathecy, the learning system made of learning parts. But uh, and yes, that's that's true. Complex responsive processes is even more accurate as a model for our organizations. Um, oh, but don't use mental models; those are out too. But still, uh, the systems thinking, as as it's taught in, say, Jerry Weinberg, and um, everything since the cyberneticists, or a lot of it, um, in the 1950s, ever since the 1950s, it's a useful direction for us to move from thinking very reductively and linearly and focusing only on efficiency. Um, and it's a useful direction, even though, of course, it's not accurate. Nothing is, no description of the world is accurate to the world. Multiple perspectives are the best we can do.
And like you say, it's already an improvement if people are thinking in that kind of direction. I think there's
Yeah.
a lot of.
Yeah, it's good progress. It's and yeah, the future is not evenly distributed, and each team can only go so far. And if we can let ourselves be different, if we can let other people be wrong,
Oh
then
yeah.
some of us will become more right.
And well, there might be a little bit wrong, but at the same time we're wrong. And if we can learn
Yeah.
to listen to them, then maybe we,
Yeah.
yeah, that, I think
Maybe we can synergize to that third truth that encompasses both.
exactly. And then we're coming back to ensemble coding and other kind of things where we try to do a lot of that.
Mhm.
Okay, I want to move to that next question about remote work. I don't know if you did some remote working before COVID, but that
Yeah, I
definitely at
did.
least the last 3 years.
In
So,
fact, I got tired of remote working and I decided I was gonna either get a local job or travel to work or some combination thereof. And that was December of 2019.
and a few months later, you were sent back
That
home.
didn't work out. I got one trip to actually go to the client site and I loved it so much. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I want to do this every other week, travel to the site and be with the other consultants and we're gonna talk about things and have a salon. And I got one. I got one. And then COVID.
But at least then it also means that you had some experience before COVID with remote. So you were, in that sense, better prepared than a lot of others in the world. And is there anything in that situation or before that you want to share with us on what really, even if it's hard for you, what makes it better for you?
Somebody needs to hear this. Buy a headset. If you don't already have a good headset and a halfway decent webcam, you probably make a tech salary. You can spend $70 on a headset and $50 on a webcam, and it will be worth it. I don't care if your work won't buy it for you. Buy it and use it for work. Okay, thank you.
Wow. Oh, I think we're going to take this clip out of that as well, and then and put. Yeah, I fully agree. It's especially in software, all of us we make a lot of money, and we can make more or whatever, but it's enough money that we can buy decent material. And somehow people thought, oh, but my company should give it, but it's so
Should
much
they?
different.
Yes. Who cares? Don't, you know what? The paperwork isn't even worth the $30.
Mhm. Yeah, and I would add to that also buy a good microphone, because the microphone is if I have a good headset and I'm listening to someone with a crappy microphone,
Right.
I
And
rather
I mean, even
prefer
like
not.
the microphones on the headsets that are like customer service
Mhm.
style headsets are not bad.
Hmm.
They're good enough for the transmission speeds that we have. I mean, I've got the podcast microphone that I only get out for podcasts, um but this is so much better than earbuds or heaven forbid your computer mic.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, if you want to get promoted, turn on your camera
Hmm.
because that builds trust. And you can tell who the architects and coaches and managers are in a team because they turn on their camera. Not like all the time, not like all day while you're pairing. That's just exhausting. Do turn off your self view though. It gets tiring
Yes.
looking at yourself all day. So turn off the self view. There's an option for that in Zoom. If you click on your picture, the three dots on your picture, you can say hide self view, so that you don't have to like be staring at yourself all day. But face to face and showing your face builds trust with people. And when you want to be either even a senior dev, but certainly a tech lead or an architect or a manager or a coach, you need people to trust you. You need to have influence, not control. And turning on your camera helps with that.
I would definitely agree, and I think this is also where there is a difference. I think also in ages. If I look at my daughter, for example, she would just even before COVID, she would do homework, and a friend that was actually no longer in the classroom, she would just do some kind of FaceTiming, and they would both do their own homework, and they would just chat or
Just
just have
normal.
it. And for them, it's like, okay, there is someone watching me all the time, and when we can chat a little bit, and that feels very normal for her. What age was she? I don't 12, 13, something like that at that time. Where a lot of others like, no, nobody can watch me and see. Okay, and I feel that there might be reasons, because I also don't want to force people to turn on their cameras. I might understand why
You don't
some
have to,
people
but you
don't.
also don't have to get promoted.
There's that. There is that.
Is
Yes,
it fair? No, sorry. This is just how humans work.
Yeah, and that's
yeah, and also there's always days. There's always days when you're just like, no, I need to not have the camera on, for various reasons. Or some people live with other people and don't have a good work environment, where they have enough privacy for that, and that's a thing too.
yeah,
And
but
it's a
yeah,
handicap
and
in that case, but you can
that
still work.
that's the thing, that it might be different for different people, and again, it depends. A lot of us in tech, we have probably a good internet connection, we have good things, but
That's true.
and
Yeah.
and
So
even if you
sometimes it's
don't.
circumstances that are giving you the handicap of not being able to use your camera.
Mhm. but
There it is.
that's
Make sure you have a picture at least, instead of just your initials on your Teams or Zoom window.
Yeah, and what I've learned, and to that, if you're please use a picture and not an avatar. As much as the avatars show something nice about what you care about, it makes it harder to recognize you. That's one of the things I really like about Teams, is now I can actually see a picture from someone and I see the name. Because if I go into a new company as a consultant, everybody presents themselves, and 10 minutes later, I don't know any names anymore. And with Teams, I can actually see the names of everybody, and I can remember some of the names. So that's one of the advantages I see. But if they don't use their picture, if they just use the initials, or then I still don't know, okay, who's Jeff and who's Zulma? I don't know
And
it.
it's hard to bond to a voice. And we really, all of our communications are facilitated by that feeling of knowing someone. And
Yeah, and a picture
if
really
you get a
helps.
chance to meet in person, like one in-person meeting makes up for so much. And then the camera becomes a lot less important too, after you've met someone in person.
Mm.
Um,
So yeah, it's that depth of connection, and it's that indeed talking and doing that sort. So that these are really a lot. That's not just one tip. There's a lot of tips around that. So you can feel that you have that experience in remote working, and not just jumping into that like we have. Okay, let's move to that. No, this is remote working. Let's move to that next question about, is there a book that you read that you want to talk about? And I think you wanted to talk about a book that you have been thinking about, or for a long time, or reading for a long
yeah,
time.
when I'm still working on, I'm like 2/3 of the way through after many years. Here's my big fat critical systems thinking and the management of complexity.
That's the one, huh?
Yeah. By Michael C. Jackson. And your cover won't look like this. You can tell I like this book because there's markings and stickers on it.
Mm.
They accumulate the ones that I'm working on for a long time. But this, I don't exactly like recommend this book unless you're like super into the details of the different genres of systems thinking. If you find yourself saying, that's not systems thinking about anything, then yeah, shut up, read this book, and then you can talk. But but I recommend just shutting up. And it's fine to go with them.
But what I also hear is that you take the time, because it's not only a tech book, but it's also, I think, well, if you're thinking
That's true.
about
I can only
multiple.
read a few pages at a time. But it goes through a lot of different schools of systems thinking and the evolution of them, and divides them into like hard systems thinking, which are like the we can develop a model of the system and put it in the computer and then predict outcomes. Good luck with that. And then there's soft systems thinking, which is much more the socio-technical side. Explicitly, socio-technical systems are categorized in soft systems thinking, and he categorizes them as suitable for, where's the little box? Suitable for predictable situations, or suitable for ones with a bunch of stakeholders with conflicting interests. And so you can see, like, oh yeah, there it is. Unitary, pluralist, or coercive. Coercive is like taking into account power dynamics. And complex versus complicated versus simple. How involved is the problem that you're trying to solve? How deep is it? And then which techniques are useful for what?
So it's kind of creating a system of system thinking
Exactly.
and categorizing it, and that's very
Which is what he
interesting.
calls critical systems thinking. Critical apparently means like at another meta level where you're practicing systems thinking while also being critical of your practice.
And that
And
reminds me
constantly-
again about you're thinking about thinking. Now you're thinking,
Exactly. Yeah. There's
I can
always
see why you like
another
that.
level of meta if you're bored with this one.
And this is at the same time why it's interesting for you, and also at the same time why you cannot just read it in one evening or 1 week. It means
Oh gosh,
really need
no.
to think to make that understand, and that's kind of the things
The
that
good
are
part is
interesting.
I like get a lot of tweets out of it. Or tweets now on Mastodon.
So you can have some. So does that and that's I find it interesting because one way I like to use tweets, for example, on conferences, also my way of kind of taking notes, and in a way that I can look back at that. Is that something similar that you do with the book, then, that you can say, okay, now this is kind of how you I don't know,
Oh
take
yeah,
notes.
pulling out themes. Like this is how I got Twitter followers. I'm really going to miss Twitter because I'm going to miss my 37,000 followers who actually respond to me. Not all at once, which is great. But the way I became popular on Twitter is by finding the themes, finding the it used to be 140 characters, that level of summary of what people were really saying, both at conferences and in articles and books and blogs, and then linking to the larger piece. Extracting a theme is a really useful activity, and it does have the effect of note taking.
Yeah, that's for me. I have really bad handwriting, so if I take notes at the conference, I would not be able to read it afterwards. For example, when I was studying, I was taking notes, but I wasn't studying from my own notes. I was studying from someone else's notes because I couldn't read it anymore. And that's one of the things I noticed where Twitter was really interesting for me. I could just type it, and people say, "Oh, you were not paying attention." Actually, I was. This was helping me to look back after the conference and to say, okay, this is what I've learned, and to read back some of the things that I was
And
saying.
speakers love it when you live tweet their talks.
Exactly. And but it's well, it takes some thing, but it's like you say, you need to think at a different level, not just what are they saying. Of course, sometimes they have tweetable things that they're saying, but sometimes it's really like, okay, what is something I see on the last 5 minutes? How would I make a 140 character thing about it? That's the
Usually,
interesting part.
usually I like that they state the theme and I snag it and quote it. But they don't always know they're stating the theme when they say it.
Oh,
at least this is the theme that matters to me out of your talk. But yeah, if you can relate it to previous talks in the day, that always goes over really well at a conference.
yeah, that's indeed so.
Exercise.
So, and I've actually learned by tweeting. I actually learned also about, okay, this seems to be popular, and so that might actually be something interesting to talk about and learn. Find actually for me, I like slides where there's just one picture and maybe one sentence on it, and by having to type in 140 characters, I learned, okay, what is a good way of writing something that is condensed and that can make it into
Yeah, I'll like drop words and stuff and still consider it a quote to fit it in the
exactly.
tweet. Yeah, I
And
kind of miss that constraint now that Twitter is 280 characters.
yeah,
Mastodon
I
500.
a lot of and exactly, then people think, oh, it's better, and I was like, no, actually I learned a lot about writing by being
Yeah,
forced. It's
yeah.
it reminds me of something I've heard in school, and I
Easier.
didn't understand at that time. But when I had to write an essay, and I once got a remark from a teacher that said, "Eve, do you recognize that you just wrote a full page and it's just one sentence because there was like comma here and whatever?" And I was like, so it was,
Wow.
and I was completely not readable because I didn't box it into to sentences. And Twitter actually forced me a lot to think in smaller things and what can I condense. And okay, you can create a thread about it, but it's actually forcing you to look at what makes sense as 140 characters, and that made me think a lot harder about languages.
Yeah,
And it's only at that time that I realized what that teacher was saying, well, probably 20, 30
right.
years later.
Which we also talked about earlier. It's more challenging to write things that are short, but also more valuable to the people reading it.
Yeah, and like you say, it needs to work. Okay, I want to move to that next question that is for
Oh,
me
okay.
one of the interesting ones. Is there a question that I didn't think of and that I should ask you, and what is the answer?
I don't know because I'm getting very tired. So I'm expecting you to ask me, who else should you invite?
Aha, and that's indeed that's that last question. Who else should I invite?
Um, some of the people who inspire me a lot lately are Beth Andersback.
And that's them.
Yep, there's Z is. And Z gave a talk at Agile 2022 that was amazing. And it's about a radical culture of culture building, I think it was, about cultural decisions and building from the bottom up. And in particular, we worry as like software leaders about how do we get people to use mostly the same language and mostly the same architecture and keep some level of sanity in our infrastructure. And the wrong way to do that is to impose one top down. And the right way to do that is to have people talking to each other and
Mm.
influencing each other. You want each team to be influenced by the other teams because then they'll probably choose the same stuff. Because then they can help each other and build on institutional knowledge and generally have a smoother time. So that, but it won't be perfectly uniform. But that's actually good because sometimes you need the variety.
Well, yeah, somehow we depends on how software is created and who is in charge. A lot of people have the idea to think everybody should be the same and should think the same. No, it's actually, then we come back to the diversity problem, and having different kind of teams and different kind of things. It's a little bit. My father used to, when so like I said, he was working in software. He used to do something that was totally not pairing, but it's similar in the sense that he was working with a colleague on a problem, but they were both working on their own computers on a problem. And then after an hour or so, they got together to get a coffee. They discussed it, and then they said, "Oh, you did it like this, I did like that," and then they both moved on again. Probably or not probably, he told me like they will think, oh, I will take your ID and I'll build again on it, and then an hour later. And it's a little bit similar. They do it completely different, but they influence enough each other to move in a similar kind of direction. And then in the end they might use just one ID if they're both working on the exact same thing, or if they're working on the different parts of it, then they needed to be in sync somehow
Right.
also.
People naturally like approach some sort of coherence when we influence each other. We don't need it imposed top down. And in fact, when it's imposed top down, we do it wrong. We'll like use that framework you told us to use, but we won't use it well.
Because we don't understand it, and we whatever.
Right. Whereas when
Yeah.
we talk to each other, we get not only that influence, but also that shared understanding. And we'll use it, not only will we use the same framework, we'll use it in the same way. And we'll upgrade around the same time, but not precisely the same time.
Or
But we'll peer
figure it
pressure
out
each other
together.
into upgrading. And
Yeah.
it'll just work.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So highly recommend Beth's talk.
it's you're actually the third person already talking about that, and indeed it's the second time that I heard that there was a great talk at Agile 2022, and so definitely a talk that people should see. I don't know if it's online.
Do you think it was
What
recorded?
so that might be, if I can find it, I will put the link here as well, because it's indeed, yeah, it's this is for me the interesting part. I haven't been to the large agile conference. Well, I wasn't really interested in going to the
It was
States,
really good this year.
and I heard so many good things about this year that I really regret
This
not
year,
going
yeah.
there.
This year, the organizers did a great job. Have you talked to Kat yet? Kat was on the organizing committee.
Katsvital.
Yes.
Yes, she's on the list. No, I didn't talk with her yet. She's on the list, and I think I've invited her already. So that's
Cool.
definitely someone to talk about and to do. But what I wanted to say is that what I've learned is that it's really interesting to ask people around about, okay, what's so good at the conference and what's the good thing. So even if you weren't there, you can actually, that's one of the advantages of Twitter and all these other kind of things, is people can actually tell this in conversations like this, like, what's the good thing, what's the best session. And apparently you're not the only one who says that this talk from that was one of the most remarkable sessions to be having, or to have listened to it. I think it was yeah, I will mix up. It's a conversation I had also this year, this week, and it was recorded. So I'm afraid to say the name who did it, because it's I had a few of these. Were there other people that wanted to invite? Because I think you had some more names, right?
Yeah, you said you've already talked to GPA.
Yeah, I had the
Yeah.
GPA as well. So let's just bring him on screen, because
There's
there's
GPA.
never
GPA Hill.
enough. It's and there is a very interesting recording. And actually, to I didn't want to mention it earlier on, but what you said about theater, he talked about a similar kind of experience in theater. So he had similar kind of experience that he linked to his development styles and everything. So if people like that part of your conversation, they definitely should check out the conversation with GPA.
GPA's doing important work in his many more much smaller steps material.
Yeah, that's definitely, and he's, yeah, it, and he well, both he doesn't get enough recognition for it, and he doesn't make enough money out of that. But I know that it's just wonderful what he's doing in it, and he's just doing it on his own, for his own, and because he believes in it. And I definitely think more people should check it out, because it's he has the knowledge and the way to explain it. So yeah, definitely worth it.
Yep. Finally, you asked me for someone else, so I always recommend Chelsea Troy.
And here she is.
Yes, and her blog is at chelseatroy.com, and she blogs about a lot of different things, from community to performance, like software performance, to functional programming, to, there's like really technical things and really social things on there both. And she's just brilliant and very practical.
Wow, that's. I was about to say, well, if you say she's brilliant, that's enough to say. But then on top of it, with being practical, that's even more interesting if you can combine it. Okay, before we go to the end, or actually, how can people contact you? What's a good way for people to contact
so
you?
Jessitron.com is my website, and there's a newsletter there. Newsletter.jessitron.com is the best way to keep up with my latest contribution, I guess.
And I'm trying to bring it up on screen, but again, my mouse pointer, there it is. And so that means I can bring it up, jessitron.com.
Yes. Twitter at Jessitron. Mastodon is Jessitron at hachyderm.io, which
I didn't prepare Twitter anymore because we don't know what will happen, and I didn't check the Mastodon.
I'm really gonna miss it.
Well, we're going to, for me, it's still, we need to see what happens, but it's
but already people are leaving.
Exactly. So that's so we even see there that people wanting to have full control, we can also tear down good systems that were not having full control, or that were
no kidding. Yes, and if you think you know everything about anything, you're wrong. The best we can do is know enough to know where to drill in and learn what else we need to know right this minute for this decision.
Exactly, and that's I think we a lot of that, what we talked about, can be taught with whatever's happening at Twitter, for both the good and the bad part. And of course, we as outsiders, we totally have no idea why things are happening, or why Elon or other people are taking certain decisions. There could be reasons, all kind of reasons, both good and bad, we don't know. But yeah, definitely things are moving there, that's for sure. Okay, I want to thank you, because it's been a very long conversation, but it's been it's been all what I expected. It's really been fun. We moved into all kind of topics, very technical, but also very about the human side of development, which is kind of what I was hoping for. And so for me, it was a wonderful conversation. So
likewise.
Okay, so thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.